Hello and welcome to Ultimate Standard Crafting and Disenchanting Guide for Epic Cards. Here I will mention all 4 expansions and also the classic set and rate this in 5 tiers. You can already see those tier lists, and in my opinion there is only one that might make some sort of small troubles. It's the third one, it's meh. So basically most of those cards are pretty weak during this state of the meta, and they might be better over time when there will be more expansions or nerfs or buffs in order to support this kind of mechanics, but right now you will see them only in like 1 or 2 decks, or they will be just not super competitive, or if you're short on dust you can just disenchant them right now and get this dust right away in order to craft something better. So we'll start with the Avenging Craft, and this is one of those cards. It's not played even in a single deck right now, but it might find a place in a different meta. For example, it was pretty okay with the Equality. Double Shadow Priest, it's very powerful in Control Priest, but Control Priest is not a thing right now, so basically we are waiting for any kind of meta change or shift. Kidnapper, it was never a thing, it's still trash, I would like never play it. Doomhammer, a pretty solid thing in like every single aggro, mid-range or overload shamey in order to deal even more points of damage. Right now there is overload deck that revolves around the Doomhammer and the Thunderhead, and yes, you want to include this card and it's pretty solid. Bane of Doom, it's basically super inconsistent, it's not really played in anything. I would just like disenchant this. You can still replace this by like any kind of different board clear, which is better. Right now it's not included in any single deck. Brawl, at some point it's like the best card ever. You would play this always in Control Warrior deck, and Control Warrior is always a thing, no matter like what kind of shifts, changes and new cards we've got in the expansion. We still play the Brawl, so this is a pretty good craft. So if you are not a Control Warrior player, you do not really need to waste dust on it. Yes, of course, but if you just consider this as an inclusion for your warrior deck, then hell yeah. This is good stuff, and basically the classic set and the whole benefit of it is that those cards will never rotate out, and even if something will change like Hall of Fame, you will get dust back for your cards, so you don't really have to be afraid of having Brawl in your deck. Force of Nature, right now it's included as a 1 copy in Token Druid deck. Yes, this is a pretty powerful option, but in my opinion it's like it's not played in Trend Druid deck even after the Mulch Muncher buff, so it's not really necessary. You can still replace this by different token cards that, you know, just generate tokens in general. So basically if you can replace any kind of card by a different effect and it's cheaper, it's especially good for free-to-play players, you should definitely go for this kind of option and do not waste your dust. Maybe you prefer any different epic card that's like way more necessary, or save for the legendary. Big Game Hunter, it's one of those cards that, yes, it is a good inclusion in a few control decks as a bonus in order to, like for example, Druid decks right now do not have Naturalized, so this Big Game Hunter might just help them a little bit, but still it's only played as a one-off, and most of the times you can just opt for the Voodoo Doll, so it's not really as that necessary. And the Voodoo Doll can be played in the Conjurer Mage, and then you can also play Conjurer's Calling in order to turn this into something different, so you just benefit more. Earth Elemental is one of those things that I would like maybe even disenchant. It's not good in this meta, it was like never played. Even Overload Shamey with the Snow Fury Giant tried to make use of this kind of card, and it was still pretty bad. And right now Big Shamey do not really want to play this kind of thing, not necessarily, and you can combine this with Ancestral Knowledge, so basically for 7 mana you will get like 2 7/8s, but still it's not really worth it. Faces Manipulator, it's not like one of those cards that it's always played, but still it's good to have at least like 1 copy, because the neutral card from the classic set that's played in at least like 1 or 2 competitive decks at the moment, it's just worth having in your collection, so do not disenchant this, and it's pretty good stuff. Molten Giant, hell yeah, like this is a thing that managed to push Mage to the top, the Conjurer Mage, the Cyclone Mage. You basically just play this on like turn 4, 5, whatever, then you play Khadgar with the Conjurer's Calling and you win the game, or even with just Conjurer's Calling. It's nuts. It's pretty powerful. It's always played in at least like one competitive deck, also like a handlock right now, but even if it's not a thing, it might be buffed later, so yes, this is definitely a safe craft. Mind games. You might say that, yeah, okay, some sort of like meme, steal, thief, priest, whatever. No, it's really bad. It's not really worth it. You do not really want to pull out like a 1/1 or 2/2, so basically pure dust. But meme is also a good category. Pit Lord, if you want to like smash your face and then do some sort of like tactical facepalm, then this is a meme, but it's just trash. Sword of Justice, it's bad. It was played in some sort of like old secret paladin as a one-off to get like a small bonus, but it was a really long time ago and it wasn't still like the most efficient option. It's bad. Farsight, good stuff. Any kind of control, big shamey, and it looks like both decks it might be a thing a little bit later. Control shamey right now is competitive. Big shamey might get better in the next expansion, but this is a really safe craft. Good stuff. Shadow Form, meme or pure dust. It's really bad. It's really bad. You don't really want this kind of thing. In Shadow Reaper Anduin, yeah, hell yeah, that was a good thing. Otherwise, I don't think so. Spellbender, sometimes it's just better when you will get this from the random effect, but one copy probably won't hurt because sometimes it's just played in some sort of specific deck like a tempo in order to surprise in order to surprise your opponent, but still I think it's really bad, so you might even disenchant this. It's like even something like here, or maybe even like, because it's not a bad card, it's not in a like best shape right now, form, whatever. Blood Knight, once again, this is one of those cards that you played as a tech. For example, if you remember the Giggling Inventor meta when it was cheaper before the nerfs, Blood Knight was a thing because it was really powerful against the Aggro Paladin, against Giggling Inventor, and all those different things that got the Divine Shield. But this is a really specific tech card, so right now it's not played in any deck, so you might disenchant this, but it's pretty solid as some sort of answer to a specific meta. Murloc World Leader, definitely worth your dust, maybe even in like because Murlocs more or less are always a thing. Right now, Murloc Shimmy, a pretty powerful option, but you can still play this in a few different decks, but there's almost always at least one competitive Murloc deck, so we definitely want this little guy to be on your side. Southsea Captain, it's not a pirate meta anymore. It's fairly bad. It's Icicle. It's bad. Pyroblast, do not craft, do not disenchant. It might be played in a Freeze Mage as a one-off, as some sort of finisher. Once again, it's just like one of those things that sometimes might be included even in Tempo Mage as a finisher, but only as a one-off, and right now there is not even a single deck that really want to use this kind of card. You might argue, okay, Freeze Mage is a thing. Freeze Mage is pretty mediocre. I would say bottom of tier 2. Snake Trap, solid. Yeah, pretty good stuff for most of Hunter decks. Secret Hunter would like to play this, different decks probably run Rat Trap, but Snake Trap is still a pretty solid option. The same thing applies to Doomsayer, might be played in almost every single control deck, so it will always find a place in the meta. Patient Assassin, that's trash, it was never played. Bestial Wrath, trash. Shield Slam, really good. In Control Warrior deck, you always want to include this right now, this kind of deck as a thing. Plus also, yeah, like, because almost always you will have some sort of weird variation of the Control Warrior, it will work, and it mostly works because of the Brawl and Shield Slam, so you might even, if you're a Control Warrior player, you might even like include this, you put this higher. And then we've got the Hungry Crab, and Hungry Crab is still one of those tech cards, just like a Blood Knight, for the meta filled with Murlocs. Right now, it's not really a good thing. I don't really want to include this in any of my decks, so you might even like disenchant this, but still, one day, if there will be like too many Murlocs that will flood the board, the ladder, whatever, this is a really good counter. Preparation, weird thing, but even after nerfs, people play this kind of thing, just because they want to include Myra's Unstable Elemental. I saw a few versions of the Tempo Rogue still with Preparation, without a raiding party, but still they include Preparation with Myra. So it looks like this is more or less a competitive card still. So I will include this in the good stuff. Then we've got the Sea Giant. Once again, this is one of those cards that can be played in, for example, Zoo Warlock and few other decks that try to rely on tokens and summoning a lot of stuff on board, then maybe even like killing opponent with the Bloodless. So theoretically, even you can include this in Murloc Shimmy, but Murloc Shimmy got different, better ways to refill and secure the board, whatever, got the late game. So Sea Giant is not really as that necessarily, but you know, a must in a few of those decks, but still good stuff. Lay on Hands, it's just really meh, or even like, because sometimes it's played as a one-off in some sort of like control deck, or if Heal Paladin will be a thing, it might be included, but right now there is not even a single deck that plays this stuff. Twisting Nether, solid in control, handlock, whatever, in any kind of like slower Warlock decks, you want to include this. Gladiators, Longbow, trash. Oh, the problem of the classic set is that we do not have meme cards. It's just like a pretty solid or just bad. Garhole, theoretically it's a solid thing, and for example like Control Warrior, but for some reason not even a single list includes this, so basically it's like a pure dust, but having one copy, so it's even like here, one copy definitely won't hurt, so if you want to play with Control Warrior, you might even include this in like tier 3. Then we've got Ancient of Lore, it's only included in Heal Druid, which is pretty bad at the moment, so I just like Pure Dust and Ancient of War, it was not played for a really long time, and I'm not sure if it will be, because still you can counter it pretty easily with a Spellbreaker, and yeah, this is a good card. I mean Spellbreaker, not the Ancient of War, so that's why I will put this here. And also Ramp Druid right now is even worse after nerfs of the Wild Curve, so it probably won't see any kind of play. So let's move on to the next expansion. And we'll start with Spectral Cutlass. This is one of those cards that might be pretty solid with few buffs, and also if your whole deck revolves around stealing cards, but at the same time it's just a little bit inconsistent. It's just like you're basically playing for fun. Box Shaper was never really a thing. It's probably better just to play with Catch the Auctioneer, then Cruncher, really bad stuff. The hard to even trigger this and get any kind of like good benefit. Death Web Spider, I think, really bad. It's no way. Ratcatcher, once again, it's really bad. Even in like theory, okay, cool, you can trigger some sort of egg. With Rush you can train into something right away, but it's just bad. Deadly Arsenal, once again, one of those, it was never played. It really never. It's inconsistent. You need to have a lot of weapons, and then you need to like trash. Town Crier, whoa, that's sick, that's amazing. Like always people try to create a warrior deck around it and basically rush minions. You can just like thin your deck and then get also a card, and also it's a solid one drop. Splittering Festeroot, trash. Worgen Abomination, it was played for a really short time in some sort of weird control variation with Warpuff and Whirlwind, but it's bad. Mousy, pretty solid thing. In some sort of control deck you can just destroy a lot of tokens, which is pretty effective against like Murloc Shimmy, Zoo Warlock, so it's solid. Whispering Woods, once again, solid stuff in some sort of like Token Druid, and Token Druid right now is a thing. Mech Hunter, I think if I remember the name correctly, it's trash. Sandbinder, pretty okay, because it's always played in at least one or two decks, especially in the previous meta with Journey to Angora, but right now it's still included in the Cyclone Mage, which is a thing, and yeah, it's just pretty solid. Cauldron, once again, it's not really as that competitive, but it might be in some sort of deck that revolves really heavily around minions and then just like killing them in order to get some sort of card draw or just more value, so it's okay, but more like a inconsistent meme. Nightmare Amalgam, once again, it might be like meh, because right now it's not included in any kind of specific deck, but card in itself, it's pretty solid because it enables some sort of like additional dragon synergies most of the times, or just, you know, you've got a little bit of everything. Voodoo Doll, pretty solid for like Control Warlock, but the problem is that Control Warlock is not really as that competitive right now, and it can be only included in Conjurer Mage, but still, it's a pretty okay card. Baleful Banker, right now it's included only in the ODK Paladin, but it's necessary there. Toxmonger, trash. Rat Trap, I really yeah, I should rate Rat Trap really high. You might even say like it's a good stuff, but it really it's played even in mid-range Hunter. You do not have any other secrets, but you just play 2 Rat Traps because it's like as that effective. Your opponent is forced to play only 2 cards, which is a really big deal most of the times. Or if they will play 3, you basically get a 2 mana 6/6, so it's pretty solid. Arcane Casemape, I need to say that it's not really as that powerful, but most of the times it's just better than running a specific secret because it's more flexible and you might catch your opponent off guard. So I like this card in general, but right now it's not really included in any kind of competitive deck. Book of Spectres, I really need to I would like to rate this a pure dust, but still it's not really it's that bad, and it's played in few decks, and especially in the Dragon Khadgar Mage, but it's not really as that good. Cathedral Gargoyle, Dragon Paladin is not a thing, but it might be in next expansion if they will focus on dragons or on this kind of archetype in general, because right now we can already see a little bit of support for Dragon Paladin. So basically, if you really look forward to this kind of archetype, you might want to leave it, otherwise just test it. Hidden Wisdom, it's not really as that bad, but it's mostly played just as a one-off in any kind of Secret Paladin deck, just because it sticks for a longer time. So it means that, for example, when you will have Sunriver Spy, it's a little bit easier to trigger it, but it's not really as that powerful as Rat Trap, for example. Vivid Nightmare, this is a meme if you want to ODK your opponent with some sort of weird stuff, or want to play this on Zarek on any kind of different weird stuff with the Undata or whatever, but it's not really as that powerful. And Wanted is a pretty mediocre card, but still it might be played in, for example, Miracle Rogue. And the Boomsday Project. First we've got Power Word Replicate. It's played in some sort of weird deck that's based on a recurring villain and also Zarek, but that's pretty bad. So basically, if you want to have a little bit of fun with the infinite board, that's okay, but otherwise the bad. Necron Violet was okay when Tefral Rogue was a thing, but right now it's really bad. This is a meme, you basically just steal your opponent cards, Thunderhead after a buff. I really need to say that it's really powerful, but it's at some point even broken. It's so hard to kill. This card was already pretty solid, so it's definitely worth your dust if you opt for any kind of Overload or even aggressive Murloc deck. So yes, right now there are 2 powerful decks that include this kind of card. Murloc Shamey, that's also Feat Overload, and just aggro Overload Shamey with the Doomhammer. Omega Mind, it's trash. You prefer to play Witch Sprue, it's way more flexible, and also you can heal your minions. You do not really need to play any kind of stupid spells on top of it. Ectomancy, I tried to make this card work, it's trash. Omega Agent, basically, yeah, okay, there will be someone that might say, it's played in a Control Warlock deck, but Control Warlock deck is not a thing, so it's really bad. Beryllium, even after buff, it's still bad. Super Collider, super powerful thing. It's played as a one-off in most of the Warriors deck, in Control, but it's not really as that broken as in the Odd Warrior meta. Sterliner, it's a meme that most of the times won't even work, but okay, just disenchant this. Basically, you will never probably trigger this effect. Dream Petal Florist. At some point you can say that this is a consistent thing, and yes, it's good in some sort of Mallegus ODK Druid deck, which is not a thing right now, but it might be in the future. So right now I will rate this as a good meme because you can ODK your opponent, but it might be competitive later. Hellomancer Trash, Seafaring Bomber, right now it's played in the Bomb Warrior, but still I don't really want to say that it's that necessary. You do not really, you can just replace this with a Clockwork Goblin. I don't know, you just do not need as that many bombs, so it's basically not necessary. Then we've got EMP, Operator, Destroy the Mech, Trash, Loose Specimen, Trash. Basically, no one ever even consider including those cards, and it's just bad. It basically never works. Omega Defender, theoretically for 4 mana you can destroy the Deathwing, but nope, it's Weaponized Pinata, well, actually, we'll rate this a good meme if you will get a good right legendary. So, you know, just pray to the orange Jesus, and this stuff might turn into a good little surprise birthday Pinata. I like. This card is played right now only in Bomb Warrior. I do not even want to run this in Pogo Hopper deck, so basically just because of it, we can include this in a good stuff, but you know, if you do not play with this kind of deck, just disenchant this, there is no reason to. Crystallizer, solid 1-drop, but it's not necessary, so you might find a lot of decks that would like to include the Crystallizer, but basically there is no reason. If you can replace this with the Yarden Square or Makaru, or sometimes with just a different 1-drop. Psych Melon, once again, this is one of those cards that's played in, for example, Heal Druid deck. It might be played in some sort of ODK, but in Wireless it's slightly better, but here it's just bad. There is not even a single competitive deck that want to include this kind of stuff. And Heal Druid is bad. Necromechanic, even after buff, right now it goes 4, not 5, but it's still pretty bad. I experimented with this kind of deck list. I also saw a lot of mech hunters, and no one included this card, even if they tried it at the beginning of the like post-buff meta. So I still rate this bad stuff. Goblin Prank, it's a bad prank made by a stupid goblin that should be removed. Astromancer, this is a pretty solid thing in any kind of like slower mage deck, in a Cyclone Mage, in a Conjurer Congar Mage, it's played, so it's pretty solid. Unexpected results, even after buffs, it's still fairly bad. You do not really want to build a deck around it, even if it's like a tempo with a spell damage. It's pretty... Glowstone Technician, right now it's played because Crystology is also buffed, so when it costs 1 mana, you basically have a lot of cards in your deck. And right now Mech Paladin, like, rise to the top. I might even say that this is like the bottom of tier 1, and yes, I also played with the version with Glowstone Technician and Crystology, and it's solid, it's a good deck. And it might be even better in the future when we'll maybe finally see some sort of like hand buff Paladin. Lens, still a pretty solid thing. I played version that also got this kind of card with Kangor's Endless Army, and I have to say it works really well. Reckless Experimenter, it's really bad. It actually got the nerf, which is a fun fact, but it was like really powerful with the Snip Snap, and then you had a chance to ODK your opponent at 5 turn, and before Snip Snap was even released, they nerfed the Reckless Experimenter because game developers missed this kind of synergy, which is sick and weird at the same time, but yeah. It still won't change anything even after like those small nerfs. It's trash, and basically disenchant this card because you can do this for the full cost, but I think no one really mentioned it, so basically you've got free 400 dust, or maybe even more if you've got more copies. And the rest I can scramble. So first we've got some sort of smaller version of the Oceanized Soul Priest, and it's really bad. It was never really planned, it was never good enough in order to just replace the Soul Priest, so just pure dust. Then Kuribashi, still it's a really big trash, which is super inconsistent, and the stat line is really bad. Cannon Barrage, a lot of people said that, oh, this will be a good card, you can play this with preparation. Right now it's even worse because of the preparation nerf, but even then it was still pretty bad and hard to gain a lot of pirates and then deal this amount of damage. Having Visions, this is a pretty solid thing. You can include this in your control deck, also in Big Shamey. I just really recommend this because you can get a specific additional specific card, and also it works really well with Spirit of the Frog. Big Bad Voodoo, it's not really as that consistent and powerful, but you can include this if you want to play with the Big Shamey. Void Contract, basically it should be something like the Thanos themed card, so we'll rate this as a meme, but it's a trash, so pure dust. Soul Warden, it's not good right now because we do not have like a solid discard deck, whatever, but if maybe we'll see more discard cards, it will be more competitive, whatever, but in my opinion it should be dust at some point, so we'll rate this as a meme because Blizzard always tries to make the discard warlock work and it never works, because it's inconsistent, because it's discard a random card, not a specific thing. So it's just funny how hard they tried to make this kind of archetype work. They maybe should finally do something like discard a specific card and you choose, like whatever. This weapon, it's not really as that powerful, so I'll rate this as a dust, but if some sort of like aggressive or tempo warrior will be a thing, it's not really as that bad, because it was played in some sort of like tempo warrior in order to protect your board, buff the Throwing Berserker, and then kill the opponent. No, not kill, but deal additional 4 points of damage. But right now there is not even a single deck that would like to run this card. Then we've got the thing that synergy is basically like a built-in execute, but you need to play dragons. Dragon Warrior right now is not really as that powerful, but it's not a trash, and also if we'll have just one expansion based on dragons, this will be a really powerful thing that I would like to play in some sort of like control dragon warrior, no matter if this will be control midrange, whatever. Crowd Roaster still is one of those cards that right now it's only played in the Conjurer Dragon Mage, but it's not really as that bad, and it's also a neutral, so basically you can play just like Murlocs are. This is like one of those things that almost always works. There is almost at least one deck that revolves around Murlocs, and it's pretty solid. So there is also at least one good deck that revolves around dragons, and right now this is Mage. Stampeding Roar, I think. This card is really bad. No way that... Like, it might be played if we'll see more powerful beasts and support for this kind of archetype, but right now it's super weak. Line Cracker, it's basically like some sort of weird version of a, I don't know, even like bad version of the Throwing Berserker, which is super expensive and it's trash. Moshog, it's pretty trash. Snapjo, it will protect your ejected minions, but you do not really need this kind of effect. Ice Cream Peddler, okay, this guy still try to gain, I don't know, like 3k armor as some sort of Shadowwork Shamey, but okay, so just because of it, it's meme, but this card is trash. You should probably disenchant this. Untamed Beastmaster, stat line is pretty okay, and if you've got a deck that revolves around really huge amount of beasts and got a little bit of Karja, it might be pretty solid there. It can be also rated as a meme because of like some sort of plot twist warlock with the Untamed Beastmaster. Then for 5 mana you basically shuffle a little bit of stuff from your hand, to your deck, and from your deck to your hand, and then you also get the buff. Yes, this is the hidden synergy, let's say, but it's fairly bad. Right now, Mass Contender, it's pretty okay in Secret Hunter, but only in Secret Hunter, so some sort of mill deck, no, just it. This is the same thing. It's basically, I don't know, why would you ever play this when 1-0-2, gain 8 armor if this will survive to the beginning of your next turn. Trash. Free Speaker, in Token Druid you do not really need this kind of thing, so it's basically not necessary. You prefer most of the times to just kill your opponent rather than turn your tokens to 5/5s, and it also, there is a condition, you need trance, so basically bad. Master's Call, amazing, really powerful, solid stuff, consistent in a mid-range hunter, but you can also play it in some sort of like different version based on Zul'jin, and also it synergizes really well with Dire Frenzy, so it's amazing. The Beast Within, trash. Blast Wave, it might be okay, but right now it's fairly bad because it works only against some sort of like token decks, and it was good in Odd Mage, but we all know that Odd Mage is not a thing anymore, so I would rate this here. Splitting Image, I've got this feeling that if we'll see some sort of support for Tempo Mage, because right now it's really bad, so Blizzard most of the times, if they will see that specific archetype is weak for a long time, they will try to buff it and finally print cards for it. So there might be potential for future because this card is not that bad, but at the same time, if you are really short on dust and you do not really believe in Tempo Mage and don't really want to like even play with it because you think K Smith is better, I agree with you, by the way, then you can just like disenchant this. The New Challenger card is not really as that bad, but it's basically like way too random, and you won't even get like, no, it's just way too inconsistent. Immortal Prelate, you can play this. Okay, this is a meme because basically you can buff it to a really huge size, but it can be countered by a silence, so then like your whole sweet combo of never getting fatigue damage, it will be just like completely destroyed. So it's, and also this deck by the way is bad. And Surrender to Madness, this card should be buffed to something like 1 mana or 0 mana, and even then probably no one would even like play it. So it's a bad meme, I think. And the newest expansion, Rise of Shadows. First Lazo scheme, I have to say that this card is pretty solid in the Miracle Priest, so if you want to play with this kind of archetype, it's definitely worth the craft, but when Control Priest will be a thing in the next expansion, hopefully this will get even better, but right now you might just want to wait with it. Unidentified Contract, I think right now it's really bad. It might get better in the future, but we'll need some sort of like specific support for this kind of expensive spells, like big spell heroic, but it sounds like a joke. So basically right now I would say that this is just a pure dust, and also at the same time it's inconsistent because you might get 4 results out from it, and yeah, when it's like more expensive, you prefer probably way more consistency. Waggle Pike, interesting, but it's still played in a tempo rogue, so if you want to play with this kind of archetype, it's definitely worth it, and it might get better over time, but yes, it's pretty solid. Magmorpher, good in the big shamey, otherwise it's bad, so if you want to play with this kind of specific archetype, it's definitely worth it, otherwise, no, just there is no reason. In control, shamey, most of the times you will just get a 5 mana 4/4, and maybe rarely you will hit some sort of effect, so otherwise it's just not worth it. So maybe just because of it, we'll just move it lower. Witch Brew, really solid thing. I don't really want to rate this like a hell yeah baby, I would like to play this in like every single shamey deck, but in any kind of control or slower shamey deck, definitely. Jumbo Imp, for now it's trash. I tried to make this work in both aggressive some sort of demon warlock deck, and also in big warlock deck. Both things suck. Darkest Tower, okay, it's a meme because you can summon theoretically a lot of stuff on board, comes from nowhere, but really it's trash. It's trash. Omega Devastator, on the other hand, that's amazing. Good stats, but most of the times you will play this on turn 10 plus, and also you will be able to rush into something because of Victor Bim at Genius. Range Caliber, it's only good if you play with Bomb Warrior, but in this kind of deck, hell yeah, it's really good. Big Butt Archmage, I play this in the big shamey deck, which is not really as that bad, but there are there are only few decks that want to include this, and most of them, they are just like fun to play. Crystal Stag, it's a really good card in itself, but right now, because Heal Druid is not a thing, we might want to wait, and it looks like they really want to push this kind of archetype. So really, if they will print just few more cards for this kind of stuff, even like if you will see High Priest, which is a paladin legendary that turns your health into armor, but when we'll see something similar for the druid, then I think this kind of card might really work. Betterhead, okay, that's trash. Theoretically, you can trade into your opponent board. I saw that few people tried to make this work, and it's synergized with Inner Fire in a big priest, but still, I rate this a pretty bad card because it's not even like, okay, Whirlwind Templar, if I remember this correctly. I rate this a meme because I saw in one of the Enthralled and compilation that Dog managed to get Outer Conjurer's Calling, the Alakir the Windlord, plus also Whirlwind Tempest, and then he got double Mega Wind Fury. So yeah, a pretty nice amount of damage, and it made me chuckle, but it's bad. Unseen Soldier, it's good because in a specific decks, and for example like Control Warrior to counter some sort of specific synergy, maybe a spell that will grant your opponent a win condition, burst, whatever, even against like a counter to a Malleus Druid, which is not a thing, but if this kind of stuff will ever take control over the ladder, you definitely want to have this kind of card in your collection, but most of the times just as a one-off, and if you want to play with a control deck. Otherwise, just Overfin, I don't really know like what was the thought process when they printed this kind of card, but I like the mechanic of getting portals into your deck and then gaining some sort of like rush minions to flood the board, but it's bad. It's just bad. This kind of elemental that will give you more spell damage over the time, it's still bad. Henchclone Hag. Right now it's played in the Murloc deck that's based on Shadowwalk, so then you will be able to also like get few more battle cries, and those things, they are like little amalgams, little 1/1s, so it's not really as that bad. In some sort of token deck I would like to include this. Magic Carpet, this is really solid. In any kind of Zoo Warlock build, hell yeah, you want to include this, but it's not really this one of those cards that's played in a lot of decks right now, so it's not really as that dominating, but it's solid. Crystal Song Portal, once again, but like, you do not really need to craft this. Why? Because you can definitely go for the different build of a token druid deck. I played with a lot of them, of like 3 or 4. So for example, in mech token druid deck, you do not really need Crystal Song Portal. So when it can be replaced, you can just save your dust. Arcane Fletcher. Right now I would say that this is a dust, but maybe over time it will get better, because this is a specific effect that might be good, but it's fairly expensive as a card draw. But Hunter do not have too many ways to get card draws, so in the future, if you really want to play with this kind of weird 1 mana Hunter deck, you might save it, but I just don't think so. 9 Lives is played in a slower version of like something like a Control Hunter based on mechs, but it's way more like expensive. Like the average mana cost of all those cards in a deck is way higher than a typical Bomb Hunter, so that's why it's also called Mech Hunter, because you can get even like better death rolls from 9 Lives. It won't be like only bombs. So if you want to play with it, it's good, but I think this might get better over time when we'll see just more powerful death roll effects in the future. Power of the Creation, once again, it's not bad, but it's not really... You do not necessarily need to include this in your deck, even if you play with, for example, some sort of like Summoner Mage. You can play, for example, Astromancer instead of Power of the Creation, and synergy with Khadgar rarely works because you do not really want to play this on turn 10, but you might. But also at the same time, it's mainly to play Khadgar with the Conjurer's Calling. Mana Cyclone, I rate this really high because it made a Cyclone Mage a thing, and also you can guess why it's called a Cyclone Mage. Basically, because of this card. So yes, it's pretty solid. You will get a really huge refill. It synergizes really well with the Elemental Evocation and also Sorcerer's Apprentice, so great stuff. Dragon Speaker, it's basically like a way worse version of the Glowstone Technician, because you need to have dragons, and then you get like this hand buff. So Glowstone Technician is basically better after the buff. Duel, I will rate this a meme because I played with big Duel Paladin. It's pretty enjoyable. Not really as that competitive, but you can still have something around 50% win ratio. So if you want to play with this specific deck, hell yeah. Otherwise, okay, this shadow figure, whatever, it's really bad. It's hard to trigger, and most of the times you don't really need this kind of weird death roll effect. It's just meh. Maybe in the future for some sort of maybe weird combo deck or a mid-range death roll priest, but even then I just don't think so. So it looks like we do not have like the ultimate good epic card from the Rise of Shadows, which is a little bit sad, but you know, sometimes it just happens. Thank you very much for watching. As always, remember to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and let me know what do you think about my ratings. Maybe you've got a slightly different point of view and I would like to just answer to it. So see you in the next videos.